Today, I'm hosting Sahil Mansuri, the founder and CEO of Bravado. And frankly, I can't imagine a better person to help us how to get paid. Sahil has built one of the largest sales communities in the world with over 500,000 members. Essentially, he's creating the Stack Overflow for sales, and he's transforming how sales professionals connect with each other, how they learn from each other, and how they learn about the markets and their worth. I'm super proud of what he has built. Before building Bravado, Sahil was one of the top performers at Glassdoor, growing all the way to becoming a manager and a leader before he left to found and be the head of product at SalesPredict. At SalesPredict, he ran that all the way to the acquisition by eBay, and then he went to build what is now Bravado. I am super excited because he has pioneered the anti-SaaS SaaS approach, building community first with zero revenue. And before any business was built, he was making sure that people can connect with each other and feel the rise of the community and the ability for them to learn. And he took that and then he turned that into a multi-million-dollar business. His ARR is well north of 5 million right now because he took that idea and then he became the place where you can find the best sales talent in the world. We'll get into the journey from politics to sales, his unique community-first building approach, and finally, what's working and what's not working in this world of agentic AI. Welcome, Sahil. I think the best is to start in the middle. All right, Sahil, you're about to drop right now something really fundamental to the state of the business in the market. Drop it. Just go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I was saying is I was agreeing with your point that, like, if you are a SaaS company that operated in this traditional sort of like selling a piece of software that would make humans more productive, and that's what you did,
Right.
that you're basically getting your entire business model upended by the rise of AI, because what AI is doing is fewer seats, fewer humans, more automation. And so ultimately, it means that your margins are getting compressed. Like, you've seen this with Klarna, you've seen this with Salesforce, you've seen this with a bunch of companies, where if you aren't actually doing the work and all you're doing is empowering a human to do the work, then you're getting beaten by someone who is basically offering a much more compelling product to the CFO or CEO of the company. And I think what is interesting about our business is that we had the opposite problem. So
Yep.
because we were in recruiting and what we did was more services heavy than software heavy, venture capitalists used to be less excited about our business because they were like, well, yeah, you have a bunch of software and yeah, you have a bunch of data, but like ultimately what you're doing is kind of a services business. The atomic unit of what you're selling is a human being, and
Right.
it's like work and it's workflows and it's like services, and like those tend to be lower margin businesses, and those businesses tend to be hard to build a moat around, and you're always going to find it really difficult to get to a software margin. And that was true. Like when we operated Bravado's recruiting business in 2021 to 2023, we were operating at roughly a 35 to 40% margin, which, as you know, is not very good for a software business. And then because of AI, now we're operating at an 85 to 90% software margin, because
What?
AI has basically taken over and doing 95% of the work that the human being was doing. Instead of having a human do it, you can now have the AI do it. And instead, we only have to layer a very thin layer of kind of customer success on top of it. And so now, our business is actually much more attractive in the world of AI, not because of anything I did. It's not like I was like a smart entrepreneur that figured this shit out. It was like literally we got super lucky that these really smart people in like Sam Altman and whatever went out and started releasing these models that basically captured a lot of the work and thinking power of a human being. And we just happened to be in this very fortuitous position where the thing that we sell, which is salespeople, we make our money by helping companies hire salespeople, is the one thing that AI is really bad at doing. You can build AI engineers and AI marketers and AI doctors, but if you want that AI product to get adopted by Siemens, if you want Siemens to buy your product, you're going to need a real life fleshy human being to fly to Germany, sit there and meet with 40 different executives over 6 months and 5 teams in order to actually get that thing implemented, go through procurement, go through legal. And so even these really flashy AI companies, the Cursors, the Ramps, the Windsurfs, the Open AIs, are building massive human sales teams. Like as they are automating other jobs, they're actually powering more human beings. And so, like, it's a really interesting world to compete in because once upon a time, our business, which was like helping companies hire salespeople, would have been a low margin, unattractive VC business. Today is a business that is extremely defensible at software level margins and is selling a product that is very hard to disrupt with AI. And we just got super lucky. It's not a matter of like,
So do
oh,
you plan it? Do you plan it that way, or like the service as a software came to you because you were just waiting for it to happen?
no, neither. I mean, basically, when I started the company, I just focused on the problem. Like I
Yeah.
can't, I could take no credit for having some vision of what the future would look like or something. No, I just knew the problem. I had spent many, many years, as you have, building sales teams, and it's really expensive. It's
Yep.
really hard, and the
Yep.
fail rate is really high, and the cost for getting a hire wrong is so expensive because you just miss your quota, and that's super expensive for the business. And so I knew the problem intimately. I didn't even know quite how to solve it, but I knew the problem existed and I just obsessed over it for 8 years. And I got lucky halfway along the way that a bunch of technologists helped build a bunch of technology that made my operation of how to solve that problem much more efficient.
So now you guys are crushing it with agent, right? You got this agent that is doing the recruiting and it has taste. And you have the whole ecosystem of the community that you build and all those profiles that you understand how people like you actually know, people's quotas and attainment
Mhm.
and overachievement and like all this information that to everybody else is obscure. So how is agents helping you to take that to market and get your competitive advantage in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think you have to start at the beginning, which is when we founded Bravado, we knew we wanted to build a network for sales. We knew we wanted to build something that would attract the very top salespeople. I'd seen many closer IQ, many vettery, many angel list A plus, sort of or A list talent. Like I'd seen so many of these business rainmakers. There were all these companies out there that wanted to solve sales hiring. And the way they thought to do it is they basically said, hey, if you're a salesperson, we can help you get a sales job. In order to do that, give us a bunch of your data. Give us all this information about your quota and the deals you've closed and stuff, and then we'll match you to jobs. And what happens when you do that is you have an adverse selection problem. So you have all of the lowest attaining, least performing sales reps who have the greatest need of a new sales job coming to your door, filling out profiles and filling your website. And you have all of the very top salespeople who are crushing quota at 200%, et cetera, who would never do that because they not only are making a ton of money and don't want to spend time recruiting, but they're getting inbounds all the time because everyone knows who the top salespeople are. That's not a hard thing to know. Sales is a small community and word gets around, and salespeople move around a lot. So it's easy to hire one person from outreach and then be like, yo, who are the top 10 best reps at
Right.
outreach? Tell me who
Right.
they are so I can ping them all and try to recruit them, which is exactly how hiring goes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the interesting thing about our business was that I knew in order to solve sales hiring, we had to start by first getting our hands around the entirety of the sales community. And I'll be honest, the company I was most inspired by was GitHub, because what I saw GitHub do really well was build this really large, compelling community around engineering, have all this data around the actual performance of an engineer. And then anytime anybody wanted to hire an engineer, you didn't look at their LinkedIn profile, you looked at their GitHub profile. And I was like, wow, that's really smart. I wonder if we could do that for sales. And so for the first 5 years of the company, all we did was build a large community around sales. And we built products for sales reps that would allow them to take the data of their performance, i.e., deals they've closed, quota attainment, and be able to get value out of it that they weren't getting already. So that data typically is inside of your CRM. That data is typically inside of your email, or maybe you have a spreadsheet somewhere where you've written it down. But you as a sales rep rarely have a living, breathing piece of work that says, hey, in 2018, I hit 150% of quota. In 2019, I hit 175% of quota. 2020 was a bad year, COVID. I only hit 60%. But hey, how did that compare to the rest of the market? And what we built was basically the global benchmark for sales performance. So you as a sales rep could document your own sales performance and then get a benchmark compared to every other sales rep on the planet. How well are you performing? How well did you do relative to the market? And then you could use that in a QBR. You could use that in a comp negotiation. You could use that in getting a better offer if you're looking for a job. And so we basically built this data store that existed. So we have all these salespeople that are members of our community. We have all this data around their sales performance. And then in order to actually match them, you need humans. And so this was
Yeah,
the
that's
part,
right. That's right.
that was hard, because you would have, a Manny come to my door and say, "Hey, I need to hire some salespeople. I need people who look just like this, and I need people who have sold these types of deals, and I want people with this percent to quota." And it's very easy for me to find those people. That's super easy. I just, a very quick search within our database. I have the people. But how do I get that person on your calendar? Now that's hard, because I have to message them, I have to text them, I have to email them. They're going to say something back like, "Who's Manny?" and what's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
paid,
yeah,
and
yeah.
what's the opportunity, and who are they backed by, and how much revenue do they have, and how many customers do they have, and what rep number would I be? They'll ask 100 questions, and someone needs to sit there and answer them. And then finally, when they finally say, "Yes, I'm willing to take a conversation with you," I need to now go to you, and I need to be like, "Hey, Manny, I found someone for you. It's this person. Here's what they do, whatever." And then you're going to look at their profile. You're going to say, "Oh, that's cool. Well, what happened here? Or why did they leave this job? Or what percent of quota did they hit?" So you're going to ask me questions. And so that part of the business would just take weeks. Like, if you build that out at scale, it was just like hundreds of hours of human labor of just going back and forth with candidates, back and forth with employers, until finally you said, "Sure, put them on my calendar." Send a scheduling link. Person can't meet at that time. Oh, they need to reschedule at the last minute. So all of my margin was getting killed in spending all this time answering stupid questions from the candidate, stupid questions from the
Yeah, yeah,
customer,
yeah.
and doing stupid rescheduling
Yeah, yeah,
tasks
yeah.
within the business. Hey, how did that interview go, Manny? Oh, you didn't update the ATS. I can't see that. Let me update it on my end. And what we did is just built Hunter, this AI recruiting product that allows you to completely automate all of that. So all communication with the candidate, all communication with the employer, and all scheduling, ATS updates, workflows are now handled by Hunter. So we don't have any human beings that need to get in the middle of the candidate and the customer.
That's amazing. So you have 500,000 people in your community that for
Mhm.
whom you have profiles, probably more at this point. And so you have seen it all. Now Hunter is making the placement. What do most people get wrong about sales and sales performance this day and age?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first and most important thing is that too many early stage companies try to hire people who come from big flashy logos. That's the
Oh,
first thing I see people
yeah,
get wrong. Like,
yep.
if you're a Series A, Series B company and you're like, "Hey, we just raised our Series B. We've got, 100 customers. We're at like 5 million ARR. We need to get to 100. Let me hire someone from Stripe. Let me hire someone from Salesforce." And I'm like, "Bro, you're not Stripe."
Right.
Like, that
Yeah.
person who joined Stripe when they were at $1 billion and took them to like $1.45 billion is not the same person that's going to take you from 5 to 100. And the recognition that you need to hire people in sales who actually come from shittier products than yours. See, the magic in sales is actually hiring someone who's overperforming at a shittier company than yours. Because if you give that same person a better product, more tools, more enablement, better marketing, they're going to way more outperform than if you take someone who's used to having perfect product market fit, all the resources in the world, and kind
Right.
of endless, brand
Pipeline
marketing, et
and the
cetera, and
entirety of the
put them into
pipeline.
an early
Yeah.
stage environment. They actually shrink and really struggle. It's not universally true. Of course, it does happen that later
Yeah.
stage people can come down. It can happen that early stage people can really struggle. So these aren't universal rules, but so many VCs give bad advice to especially around VP of sales CRO hiring. I'm sure you've never experienced this,
Oh
where
my
you
God.
hire. Yeah, Manny, you've probably
There's
seen
so
this
many
movie,
years
huh?
of my life I lost to the stupidity like that. Yes.
And so, like, it just turns out that you need people who are builders, who are entrepreneurs, and to find that, you need to often look early stage. So I think that's one thing that people get wrong. I think the other thing that people really get wrong is understanding how contextual and nuanced sales hiring is, which is to say that just because someone was successful at selling a similar-ish product to yours 7 years ago doesn't mean they'll be successful today. The market changes, the tactics change, the tooling changes, and sales is a game of, you gotta, like, what was working 3 years ago is probably over commoditized and not working today. It's the
100%.
people who can innovate on what the next trend is that are really valuable. And there's very few people that can do that. And I think that we tend to get obsessed with hiring folks who have a glitzy resume and who have done it before, as opposed to thinking from first principles on who can do it today.
So what are the markers? So what are the principles for somebody who can do it today? that hasn't done it in the past, so you can go hire that person?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it depends on the stage, it depends on the sales process. It's a nuanced question, but let's take
Yeah.
like two kind of examples on opposite ends, and maybe this can help. So let's take a company like Owner that we're working with. So Owner is this
Oh, they're
company.
blowing up. They just race. They're
Yeah,
all
they
over the
just
place.
raised
Yeah.
at $1 billion valuation. Amazing company. Kyle Norton's their CRO. Great guy, super smart
I
dude.
love Kyle. Yeah, yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Kyle and I have been working together and helping them hire for sales talent, and I've
Yeah.
seen some of the inner machinations of how they do sales recruiting. So I hope Kyle doesn't mind me sharing some of this. But one of the things that they really do is they focus really hard on finding people who are able to survive and sell into a blue collar environment, because they know that
Right.
most sales reps have sold into a white collar environment. They know most people have sold these like really, if you sold, whatever, sales loft, or you sold a gong or something like that. Selling 100K, 200K ACV product, enterprise sales, whatever, and
Right.
all of a sudden you're cold calling on
This is
restaurant
a white
owners.
collar. It's a white collar job. They're sitting on their desk. Their hands are
Totally.
like nice and manicured. What I mean? Whereas if you're
Yeah,
selling into
that's
the owner
right.
customer base, that's a different. That's a
It's a
different
totally
kind of
different customer
customer.
base. And I see a lot of companies that have products that are 10K ACV, 15K ACV, like fast sales cycles, small businesses that are just looking at the wrong profile of salesperson. Like, you need to hire people who are gritty, who can get on the phone, who can cold, like on their job ad. It's like, we cold call. If you're not comfortable spending 90% of your time cold calling, this is not the job for you.
A hundred
We sell
percent.
to restaurant owners. They're super busy. Like, if you can't say, like, they market the job and advertise the job as it is. They don't
Yeah.
send the job to you in a way in which they're glitzing it up to be something that it's not. So a
Yeah.
company like that, I think, is thinking about, what is the ICP and sales motion that works for us, and let's find people who've been successful in a similar motion. Which for Owner doesn't mean hiring from venture backed startups. It can mean hiring people who went and did door to door sales. It can mean hiring people who came from non technical backgrounds, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
training them, because they can teach them all the tech stuff, but it's really hard to teach someone how to sell to a restaurant owner who's like, Dave's Pizza. And you need to get that guy to sign a 10K contract with you, as opposed to, talking to Cheryl who's got 5 EAs and whatever. And like, that person's very different in terms of their the sales motion and phenotype. So I see that
A
people
hundred
getting
percent.
that wrong a lot.
So it was interesting because I had a profile back when I started when we started outreach in the early days. We're still selling low ACV contracts. Bartenders. What
Mm,
a great source of talent. And they can hold a conversation like nobody else. You know what I mean?
sure.
They got nothing but stories. They can relate to an owner. They can relate to somebody that's small. So what are the companies that you look for when you're selling to owner? Is it like Procore? Is it like,
Yeah, I
people
mean,
selling point
Procore's
of
probably
sale
too
kind of stuff?
enterprisey too. I think Samsara is a really interesting
Samsara?
one,
Yeah,
or Keep
yeah.
Trucking, or Convoy, or like those are really interesting. Uber Freight's probably, Uber
Right.
Eats. Yelp, I think, is a really interesting breeding
Oh,
ground. Like,
Yelp is brilliant. Yelp is
yeah, so
brilliant.
it's like those sorts of companies that I think are really interesting to go after, because they're so used to that environment. So yeah, I think that's what you're looking for.
So are you still seeing, remember we used to see this a lot of like people wanting like the met pick
Mhm,
savant. So you wanted somebody who came out of like Blade Logic or like whatever and
mhm.
like did the turns at all these like method companies and then you will hire him. Now it's turning into for and now you want now the new term is like I want the forward deploy, like in engineering or like in pre-sales, I want the one that they forward deploy because if Palantir can do it, we can do it. Is there any what's a new thing? Like what is the new like rubric that everybody applies to everything because that's where the winners are?
You know, I think what is starting to happen, I think this is a good thing, by the way, what I'm about to
Yeah.
say. But what's starting to happen is people are stopping thinking about a generic rubric. And I think people are really customizing their hiring approach to the specific industry, sector, ACV, ICP that they sell into. And they're starting to
Yeah.
think more thoughtfully about what that looks like. I think it used to be easy to just like pick up your little red book or something and just like, take the sales tactics that you wanted from there. Everybody kind of was really excited about the challenger method for a while, and then everyone was really excited about medpic for a while and stuff. And I think I'm seeing less of that, which I like and I'm happy about. I think it's also because we're getting a new kind of era of sales leaders who are coming in, who are not quite as up to speed on the same like AAISP methodology and Forrester methodology and stuff,
Oh,
like
that
we're
you
leaving
reached
some of
way
the
back on that
dinosaurs in the
one.
background,
Oh my
and we're
God.
starting to modernize, like the meteors hit, and now we're in the next stage. Um, but
They're all
but
gone
no, like
now.
but the modern, I mean, again, I don't mean to turn this into like a Kyle Norton love fest, but like I think Kyle and Stevie Case from Vanta, who's another friend of mine who I really love, like what they're doing is they're embracing AI themselves, and they're CROs who are coding in AI, who are forcing their teams to adopt AI and are using these tools as advantages for themselves as opposed to being threatened by them. This
Yeah,
is something I see in recruiting a lot. Actually, it's a really tough problem for my business to solve, which is a lot of the work that we do for a company, an internal recruiter would do. So there would be
yeah,
humans that would be sitting there who would be messaging candidates on LinkedIn, that would be doing screening calls. So we have a hunter screening agent that can basically hop on the Zoom just like this and do a screening call with a candidate. We can do inbound resume review automatically and reach out and do scheduling. Now, those
yeah,
were tasks. We do ATS updates. All of a sudden, I'm like talking about 80%, 85% of the daily workflow of a recruiter. So there's companies out there, who I will not name, who are extremely resistant to using a technology like Hunter because they are threatened by it. And now, of course, the individual recruiter is often threatened by it,
right,
and that
right.
makes sense. But I'm talking the VP of talent, the VP of HR at the company, extremely threatened,
They're resistant, but really,
extremely
but their job
resistant.
is to deliver butts and seats that perform. No, like isn't
That's
it?
that again. Now you're thinking like an early stage CEO, and you're not thinking like a
There you
career
go. There you
executive.
go.
Their
There we go.
job is to protect their team. Their job is to use their methodology. Their job is to it's like the CMO who comes in and the first thing they want to do is rebrand, right? Like it's like they want to come in, they want to build their team. No, I swear to God, there's a company that churned off of using Hunter. We basically hired 6 people for them in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Their entire recruiting team, which was 10 people, hired 5. So their 10-person recruiting team hired 5, we hired 6.
yeah.
And they churned. And the reason that they churned, I swear to God, this is what they wrote in the email. They were like, "Hey, Hunter was an amazing experience. Went really great. The reason we're not is because we're going to continue to make some investments in human recruiters, and so at this time we don't have budget." That's literally the reason
Oh
that they
my
wrote
God!
that.
But the world is moving like the opposite way.
It
Like
is.
it's a,
And there's company, and those people and those companies unfortunately are just going to really struggle.
what happens to that entire like the recruiting assistant? Is that job gone? Like what's happening to that job if Hunter wins?
Well, so that's a great question. Let's talk about the other side of it. So let's talk
Okay,
about what the
let's
other
talk.
side of companies are doing. So then there's a whole host of companies who are saying, "Hey, look, if Bravado is going to handle for me all of this busy work that our team used to do, that
Right.
means I need to spend less money on LinkedIn. That means I need to spend less money on less time on all these recruiting screens and whatnot. What can I do with that time? What
Yep.
would be a good use? Well, what if we instead went a lot deeper on culture fit? What if we instead
Oh,
made
interesting.
sure that we dug in and did more back channels per candidate in order to figure out if they were really the right fit? What if we really worked hard on closing the number one candidate instead of just settling for one of the top three? And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's use this as a way to get much more efficient. So spend less money on things like LinkedIn. And let's use this in order to improve our close rate on the very top candidates by going above and beyond on delivering an outsized experience so that we are winning the talent war by using these people that we have who used to waste their time sending messages on LinkedIn, now are on the phone, are on planes, are talking to people, and are doing the things that Hunter is not going to do. What Hunter can do is find you the right people and get them on your calendar. What Hunter cannot do is convince that person to join your company over another. Right? Hunter
Right.
doesn't sell. Right. I want to make that really clear. We are not selling, and recruiting is a sales job. And the
Right.
companies who are forward thinking are saying now my recruiters can stop wasting time entering data into the CRM and spend more time with their customer, which is the candidate, as opposed to spending more time inside of the ATS. And that's what I think is the difference between forward-thinking teams who are basically saying, "Great, get all of this crap off of our plate so that we can actually get more efficient and close better candidates," and companies who are being protectionist and defensive in their approach.
So this is really important because you're pointing at something that every AI agent company has. All of them are taking over a portion of the role. And whether you call that, human enhancing, or you can call that human displacing, is up to the in the eye of the beholder. So this is happening across the board. And all of them are saying, look, these are all the things that you can be doing with your time. Like so for instance, the whole I'm going to check references. That's brilliant. Most people don't check all the references. It's sort of like a check mark and they move on. The other one is improve your onboarding. Take the same people and make the whole experience, the whole candidate experience, superb. Because what? Like then you get a much better return over the period of the use of the human being than trying to schedule meetings or like, check out LinkedIn or whatever.
I mean, the distribution of offers between the top 10% of salespeople and the rest is so wildly divergent, as you know. The
Yeah.
top 10% of salespeople, on average, get 6 offers every time they interview. The
Oh
bottom
yeah.
90% of salespeople on average get 1.4. We've been tracking this data for 5 years over thousands of jobs. So we have a pretty good perspective on it. What that means is 5 out of 6 companies lose out on a top 10% salesperson after they get all the way through the process and have already made them an offer. 83% of companies miss out on the upper echelon salesperson that can, as you know, be a really big needle mover. What
Right.
if you track the metric to say, how do we use these people in order to take our close rate from 1 out of 6 and make it into 2 out of 6 or three out of
Right.
six? Like that's where I think it's really interesting. I think candidate onboarding makes a ton of sense, but recruiting isn't solved by Hunter. We aren't solving recruiting. All we're doing is making your organization significantly more efficient by taking the stuff off their plate that they were wasting their time doing dumb shit on LinkedIn and in the ATS, right? Like we are not doing the work. Like if you look at you said displacing or enhancing human work. If you take a human being and you basically break down all of the workflows that they do in a day, there's a very small number of them that are really high impact individual skill based, and there's a large number of them that are mundane, rote, and necessary. All
Right.
the mundane, rote, necessary stuff AI can handle.
Yeah.
The creative, problem solving, enhancing, like business moving stuff, AI isn't able, I don't think, to do that yet. I don't think we're there yet. We may get there at some point. That's for other hands to solve. But at the moment, I don't think we're there yet. I've seen a lot of recruiting agents besides Hunter. I track the market really closely. None of them can convince a really top candidate to join your company over another. Why? How can one AI agent convince you to take one job over another? I don't think we're there yet. A human has to do that. Like you got
Right.
to get on the phone, Manny, and convince the candidate to do that. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that the recruiting team can help with that no AI agent can do, but that the recruiting team didn't have time to do because they were spending their time like messaging the next 1,000 people on LinkedIn.
Right. 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 No, 100%. And I think that this is only going to get better. Meaning the AI will eventually get to a point in which they can do a lot of the pre-selling. You know what I mean? And that so that the manager whose ass is on the line to get this person in and get him to perform, that person will be doing the closing. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So what is in this day and age, what has changed? What is the new AE doing that he wasn't doing or she wasn't doing before? What skills are in? What skills are out when it comes to hiring reps in the era of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think one really big change that I see is the rise of the go-to-market engineer and the ability to interface with the GTM engineer in a really thoughtful way
Yeah.
is something that is new. I think the number of AEs who even can define what a go-to-market engineer does is fairly limited, and
Mm,
I think that's a big mistake. I think that's a huge problem because if you can't understand where the future of top of funnel is going, and your ability to be able to interface with that, I think, is really challenged. So I think that's one, like technically understanding what clay tables are, being
yeah.
able to understand, how one uses some of these cutting edge tools that are out there in order to get signals on who might be the right prospect for you to reach out to. The other big thing that I think is obvious that you know so well is that prospecting is really in. Like I think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
for a
yeah.
while there,
I'm loving it, dude. I'm
prospecting.
loving it. I'm loving it. People are finally getting busy, going, getting their fingers a little busy, picking up phones and, dialing.
I
Love it.
mean, it got to the point where, there are these companies out there. I don't know if you've heard of them, Manny, but there are these companies out there that made it so easy to send a bunch of emails, and it was so effective. It worked so well that you were able to basically farm out what I think is the most difficult job in sales, which is convince somebody who's never heard of you to take the interest and the time to listen to your sales pitch. I think that's the
Yep.
hardest part in sales. Once you get them into the door and you get them on the pitch, most people have a really tight funnel. Most good sales teams are able to close. The problem's always top of funnel. And
Yep.
so if you are able to do that, if that's the thing that you needed to do, you took that job and you gave it to the most junior person on your team. You gave it to the 22-year-old fresh out of college person,
Yep.
and that has stopped. And now what I see is that prospecting is at the top of the fore for AEs, and people who are able to build relationships, get on planes, go to conferences, have a network, do social selling, do these things that seem to be, gone 5, 7 years ago. Those skills are really in demand, and I think the best sales teams have their AEs think first and foremost about generating their own pipe.
So how do you test for that? Like what are the best pickers doing right now to
Yeah,
test for that?
it's a great question, because again, this is I hate to keep saying this, but I think it's like so nuanced depending upon who you're selling to. So we've talked a lot about the SMB owner side. Let's look at the other side of the equation. So if we take a super enterprise top down sale, if you're selling something really technical, like a cursor, like a
Yeah.
windsurf, like a chain guard, a Vercel, these are clients that we work with in order to help them hire for really senior technical enterprise salespeople.
Yeah.
And what we see with their hiring process and what they're doing is they're saying, look, we want to hire folks who have either software engineering backgrounds. So when they get on the phone, they're super technical with their customer,
Yep.
have at least been able to code their own, like do their own vibe coding, and have been able to work and use these products themselves. Like effectively what they're saying is that you don't need to be a software engineer in order to get this job, but it sure doesn't hurt. And if you're not a software engineer and you're not able to write your own code in today's day and age, you probably shouldn't be selling a technical product. And I
Right.
think that's where I think things get really interesting and compelling, is the ability to meet the customer where they are. So if you're selling to restaurant tech and you're selling to a restaurant owner, you need to be able to sell to that blue collar professional and sell in their environment. If you're selling to the CTO of IBM and you're trying to convince that person to change the entire way that they ship software, which has been established over the course of many decades, like you better be able to be deeply technical as an AE. It's not enough to say, "Hey Manny, that sounds really interesting. That's a great question. Let me get back to you." Or, "Hey, Manny, let me get Gaurav, my sales engineer, to come on the phone and help answer that." Like, you got to be able to do that yourself. And I think
Right.
the rise of an AE who has deep subject matter expertise has never gotten greater. Like, I think for a while there, we almost saw AEs as like quarterbacking the deal. And I think those days are
Right.
done. I think AEs don't quarterback
They
deals now.
will bring
AEs
my
got to sell.
SC. Let me bring my SC. Let me bring my technical guy. Let me bring my overlay. Let me like what
Yeah.
happened to that? It's gone.
Yeah, no, no, I think you gotta be able to do it yourself, and if you don't, because AI is making things much more efficient and bringing these things to the forefront anyway, if you can't do it, you're gonna get replaced by an AE who can, and the AE who can is gonna build so much more trust and get deals closed so much faster than you will, that you're just gonna get left behind. And so if I'm basically, look, I sell to recruiters, right? I sell to 2 personas. I sell to the CRO and I sell to the CHRO. These are my 2 personas. I spend a lot of my time knowing what's happening in the world of sales and knowing what's happening in the world of HR. So when I
Yeah.
get on the phone with that customer, I'm able to educate them on the latest trends of what other companies are doing in the space in order to be more efficient, so that they trust my recommendation of how they should use AI in their business. If I can't do that, if I can't build credibility by speaking their language, then why would they ever change their entire business process based on what I have to say?
Right. Right. No, 100%. So now, last question. So the fastest way to get LinkedIn attention is to talk about AI in sales. And so what is everyone getting wrong? Like what are the VCs and like the early stage full of shit? Because you're playing the ball where the ball is at. What are you seeing that everybody else is getting wrong when it comes to AI in sales?
So I have 2 things here, one of which I'll see how you feel about.
Yes, yes.
But I'll see
Bring
how
it.
you feel about it, because
All right.
I saw a recent interview that you did on this podcast with the CEO of one of the AI SDR companies, talking about, kind of the future of AI SDR.
Yeah.
I think that job is never going to exist. I think it is. I think having an AI that responds to inbound leads and does qualification and stuff, I think that makes sense. It is my opinion, it's just my opinion. It's my opinion that you need real human beings in order to do outbound. That doing outbound with a automated tool is not going to exist. And here's why I feel that way. I think sorry, and let me clarify that. If you're selling a low ACV product, if you're selling a 10K, 20K, 30K product, I think it's fine. Like people sell Slack licenses using a self sign up form. People sell Zoom licenses using a self sign up form. But you know what Slack and Zoom both got really wrong is that they both really were late in the game in order to build big enterprise sales teams until they really started feeling the crunch of trying to go up market. And you know what happened to both those businesses is they got annihilated at the top of the market by Microsoft and by Google, who have massive sales teams and huge distribution.
Yeah,
In
I think
fact, I saw
Zoom's ACV
something.
is still like 6K or something. Like it's still
Totally.
not there.
Actually, I mean, you've seen the whole Slack. Everyone's seen the Slack Microsoft Teams like chart, where like Microsoft just took
Yeah,
them over.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And the ultimate irony. So in 2016, Stuart Butterfield had an article published in Business Insider where he wrote, "At Slack, for us, no salespeople." And he basically was very proud of how at Slack they had no salespeople. And he said, "We will never hire salespeople to sell this product." And
Yeah.
the ultimate irony of that is that Slack had to get bought by Salesforce, the ultimate big company sales team, because they got crushed by Microsoft for not having enterprise salespeople. And and and
100%.
all Stewart's article told me when that was published in 2016 was that they had never really sold to the Fortune 500. Because if you've sold to the Fortune 500, you need a shitload of salespeople. And I think
100%.
if you play that tape forward, Square, Jack Dorsey just did an earnings call for Square last week. And he basically came out and said, we have spent the last whatever decade building the best product in the market and whatever. And he goes, our competitors, Toast, and I think he mentioned a couple others, have been going around door to door, handing out free samples of their product and getting into the customer's door. And it turns out that we're losing a bunch of deals that way. So Square's
Wait, he said that on an earnings
on
call?
an earnings call. Yeah, yeah. He literally said 80% of
What?
our revenue, you can look this up yourself. 80% of their revenue comes from inbound, 20% is sales driven. And he said he wants to make it his mission to make that 50-50. And he realizes for the first time, said this on an earnings call, for the first time he realizes that Square needs to hire more salespeople. This is a real quote from Jack Dorsey, who is one of the smartest people, much smarter than I am. It has finally come to realize that maybe he should hire some salespeople. So, like, you would be shocked at how behind people are on this. So, I realize that I've been in sales for a really long time. I've been building a community of sales for a long time. You have been near salespeople a long time. My very strong opinion is that as more and more companies build more and more automation and AI products, the demand for hiring more salespeople will go up. The compensation of sales professionals will go up, and companies that try to automate away sales not automate away the busy work of sales. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I definitely don't think sales reps should ever be entering a note in Salesforce or whatever. Like I'm not a curmudgeon. I just don't think that you can ever expect Oracle to plop down $500 million to your company for a massive enterprise deal unless you have a team of outstanding sales reps. And I think every one of these AI companies is going to overinvest in hiring great sales teams. And the ones that do are going to be more successful than the ones that don't.
That is such a mic drop moment right now, right there, that I don't even know what to say right after that. I feel like I will just be, pissing in this beautiful pond that you spilled, right? So I'm just going to cut it off. Thank you, brother, again for like spending time with me. We're gonna market the shit out of this one. There's nothing. You got like 5 truth bombs in there that is just gonna be LinkedIn fodder for at least 2 months. So this is amazing.
No, you're the best. And I would like to say one thing about I did not say this, and I would like to say that when you first told me what you were working on, which I think was a few months ago, and I got introduced to it, I think what you're working on is such a compelling problem because it's something that I run into a lot as well, which is this whole idea that like, okay, so we're doing all this work, we're doing all these things for companies. How do I charge for it? How do I make sure I'm capturing the value and aligning that to customer incentive and stuff? I think the business you're building building is really compelling, because every company eventually is going to have to move off the per seat model. This is where we started the conversation. Let's kind of tie it back
Yeah, yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
Every company's going to have to move off the per seat model. They're all going to have to get to outcomes driven in some way. It doesn't have to be in the same way. I think everyone's going to have their own flavor to it. Some people are going to charge tokens. Some people are going to charge for jobs to be done. So, whatever. Everyone will have their own flavor of it. But eventually someone's going to have to say, here's how much work I did for you that a human would have done, and here's how many salary hours you saved, here's how much labor costs
Yeah,
you
yeah,
saved,
yeah.
so you would have spent this much on humans and now you're going to spend this much on AI, and this is why the math works. Everyone's going to have to make that calculus with their software at some point. And if you can be the system of record that can help companies and customers come to alignment on that, I think that's a really cool opportunity. So I'm super excited about what you're building too, man.
No, I appreciate that. And I think about your business all the time because that outreach is a pivot from recruiting. So the recruiting business is actually something I know a lot about. And out of all the job description, out of all the type of jobs that AI is replacing, you have the most amount of opportunity to capture the great majority of value. You see what I mean? Like I have like 10 ideas for you right now on how you can double your income, like right now. You know
I'm
what I
in.
mean?
I'm
Because
in.
there is so many things that you could be doing. But anyway, I'm gonna call you right after this to make sure that we got time on the calendar to blow up your business and make it even faster
From
growth.
your lips to God's ears, sir. Thank you so
Right,
much.
brother.
I love to jam with you, brother. Cheers.